fitting it inside of the doctor's office?
Certainly. Most of the medical devices in hyperbaric are actually hospital facilities or outpatient facilities. And at the time we started because I was involved with Dr. Cross, who's the president, Warren at Houston, and we were involved with a company, Dr. Ron Shacker, who was an inventor in ophthalmology. I know it's unrelated, but in any event, we were traveling around the world training surgeons on how to do this new surgical procedure for the eye. And we were in Korea, South Korea, at the Samsung Hospital. And as you probably are familiar, most surgeries are done earlier in the day. And so we had a theater of about 200 surgeons that were brought in the above theater. And I'll try to make this short. Anyway, we went through the surgeries. We were done by 6 o'clock in the morning. And you can't leave the country because you have to make sure the patients are good the following day, no infection, and they have vision. And so we were just surrounded with nothing to do, not speaking the language. This is like 25 years ago. And Dr. An, who was the chairman of the hospital, invited us for a tour, which was many, many blocks. It's owned by Samsung. It's an enormous facility. And one of the places he took us was the pediatric ward. And there were long picnic tables with, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 children sitting at each table, each wearing like an event badge around their neck. So one table had blue and the other one gray, whatever the colors were. So I asked Dr. An, what was this? He said, this is the pediatric hyperbaric facility. I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. And he goes on to tell me that there are children with autism and the multiple sclerosis and infections and all kinds of things. And they come there every day for their treatment. And each table has a different color for what's wrong with the children. And I said, it's amazing. I need to look into it. On the same trip, we had gone around the world. It was the least expensive way and time saving to go it. And our last trip was in Berlin. And when we were done with the surgeries in Berlin, a hair professor, whose name I forget, asked if we'd like to see his facility. And of course we said yes. And he says, let me take you to the cardiovascular ward where we're doing something new. And it was new there. It was called putting a stent in, which was not done in the United States at that time. And he called it his stent ward. And we go there and we've got people sitting that just had their surgeries. And I said, what are they waiting for? He said, they're going in the hyperbaric chamber. And I said, this is the second thing on the trip. I never heard of it. He said, well, they go in for accelerated healing, and also it reduces any swelling naturally. And he goes on to tell me how great it is. Anyway, about two and a half, 3 years later, I sold the company to Novartis in Switzerland. And when that was over, I had been already living in another state. And I decided, let me look into hyperbaric. And I realized you can't do it in your office because none of the equipment fits in. And I started to talk to physicians I knew, and they said, why don't you try to contract with a hospital? And so we created, legal documents through a medical attorney in Dallas. And we went to a hospital and said, we're going to bring in a multi-place chamber. We treat many people simultaneously. And you do the billing to your insurance company because it's your patient, and you pay us a fee. And our doctors will do the treatment, and we bill for the physician fee. And they said, great. Well, that wound up getting us to be the exclusive facility in Houston with MD Anderson for the patients that had issues after radiation therapy called radiation necrosis and other things. And then San Antonio and Fort Worth. We wound up with 5 hospital facilities. And it was very, very revealing that I was paying marketing people to go to doctors' offices to get referrals for them to send their patients to our outpatient hospital facility that we owned on the hospital's property. And none of the physicians made any money. And so back then I engaged an engineer who worked for one of the hyperbaric companies that we purchased from and told him my ideas. And of course, with the owner's permission, I said I'd pay the young man privately, but I wanted to give him a description of what we needed. And he designed a hyperbaric chamber that a patient could be seated instead of lying down, that would fit into a physician's examining room. And I could not find any technology anywhere in the world that would be able to build this medical device. And because of the improvements in or the new revelations that you get in development and science, they developed an extensive use of hyperbaric, similar things called pressure vessels, and a hyperbaric chamber is a pressure vessel. Well, we found out through a connection of our CEO, actually, two engineers in Kansas City that were contracted to doing work for Boeing. And at the time, they said they can't divulge what materials are used because of the contract they had. They had to wait a couple of years until that was over. And we found out that Boeing was manufacturing fuselages, or were going to, utilizing carbon fiber and Kevlar. And a fuselage on a plane is a pressure vessel. You're seated at, you're going, 400 or 500 miles an hour at 30,000 feet. A hyperbaric chamber stands still with no motor in it. So you knew that the material would work and the pressure would be nothing compared to what it has to be in an aircraft. So we started to work on the development, and then about a little over 2.5 years ago, we started to write the patent, which took some time, and which has now, of course, been approved. And we wind up talking to physicians all over the country for a number of years. And I've yet to speak to anyone who had said, well, that's great. I don't have to refer out. I could do it in my office and make money. And that's where we are today, with a device that's patented, that will be FDA approved. And the reason we're so certain, this is considered a Class 2 medical device. And what that means for the FDA is if it meets the existing criteria in function and safety of an existing FDA-approved medical device, they will approve it. Of course, they want to test that it does that. And there's only 3 features that it needs to meet. One is the strength, and carbon fiber and Kevlar are 5 times stronger than steel and 50% of the weight. It has to meet something called PDH-01, which is a pressure vessel for human occupancy, as long as the person could fit in and out easily in case of an emergency. And it has to meet a fire code called NFP 99, which is universal in the United States. It's not state by state or area by area. And so the material meets all those codes, and the design for the additive manufacturing CAD system will actually meet all of those codes. And so we'll be able to, at that time, market and sell it to the vast. We could sell more than we could make, because a regular hyperbaric chamber right now, before there are supply chain problems in the world, the companies in the United States were about 3 months out to manufacture and deliver one hyperbaric chamber. And there's probably 5 companies that do that. With the supply chain problem, which is improved from the worst, about a year ago, it was running 7 months to make one. And we'll be able to make one a shift, so that our production would be much greater. But still, it's just the absolute minimum percentage of the market. And the market for us is focused only on 15 medical specialties in the United States that already have patients that have conditions that code for insurance payments. So you might be aware of, or in time find, a great use currently of hyperbaric chambers are in wound care centers. That's true, but wound care centers are larger and they only treat wounds. So it's not worth running after that, because Other companies with equipment could fit their equipment in a wound care facility because they're large rooms. A physician's office, almost 100%, not quite, maybe 96% of all physicians examining rooms in the United States are 10 by 10 or 10 by 12. The space code that you need to meet in the United States would have to make the room 10 by 20. It doesn't exist. And if it exists, there's very, very few. Everybody has gone to a doctor's office for an exam. You sit on a table or a chair. There's a little desk in there and a cabinet, and the room's 10 by 10 or 10 by 12. So the competition hasn't been able to address that. And the way they manufacture the equipment, it can't be made to fit into the room. They're not about to change. And if they wanted to use our technology, the patent is very clear that it covers any form of additive manufacturing, which means it could be 3D printing, 4D printing, maybe 5D printing someday. And it could use any materials that are made of solid, liquids, or gas. So even though we know the materials we're going to use, the patent was written because nothing like that existed, and our claim was for any solid, liquid, or gas to be additive manufactured, and the FDA and the patent office approved it. So that's a slight overview. If you have any questions.
Yeah, so he gave an introduction and he stole a lot of my money. He's the man, so I'll let him keep going. He's also, he's the inventor, so our company, RxAir360, we purchased the invention from him, and he's still on that agency, he's still excited, 81 years young as a consultant, and he's really involved with the care program. And you'll see iPhone 1 and 2, that's Sean and Mario, they're both along with our care program. And Stan, if I can talk for like 30 seconds on the care program, then I'll let you do that too.
Excuse me?
I said, I'll let you talk about the care program for 30 seconds. This is what his involvement was. He was like, I just want you to run the company, and then this is my legacy. This is what I want. He mentioned earlier how when children, how we was introducing the hyperbaric chamber, and you can explain the care program.
You want me to do it?
Yeah, children are everything.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, what happened is over the years we saw the problem of so many patients that live in communities that aren't very well off financially, and the 20% copay, even though they had insurance, was costing them $400 or $500 a day, and they couldn't afford to treat the children and pay the copay. And of course, we got clearance from the hospitals we were in. We wound up treating numerous children in each facility at no charge. So the hospital couldn't bill it. We didn't get charged. We didn't bill our physician fee. And so even though the name is not original, I came up with using the name CARE, as children are really everything. And our plan is that every single month, we're going to donate, deliver, and install one of our RxAir360 chambers to a children's hospital in the United States, providing they do not charge the parents or the family of the child for the care. And until you get to see it and the results, I can't tell you how heartwarming. The money always matters, but there's nothing like seeing a little child start walking when they had a broken leg and it healed very quickly, or crushed bone, and even crushed bones code for payment. The problem is we don't want, if the hospital is going to bill, then they're obligated to charge the patient the copay. They can't forego the copay. And so by them billing the insurance company, the family's still obligated to the copay. There's no benefit. And since it's nothing out of pocket for the hospitals, because we had the full burden, they approved it. Of course, I didn't do 30 or 40 children a day or anything like that, but only the cases that were presented to us that we accepted. So this way, we're assured that at least once a month, we'll have a facility up and running, and there'll be children treated constantly. without any financial responsibility or obligation for the family.
Right. All right, thanks a lot. So the last person that I want to introduce here is James Hanks. With your marketing, developing new product, marketing is the key, is everything. So James Hanks is everything right now. So he's our chief marketing officer. He's in Florida. As some of you heard earlier, he runs entrepreneurship retreats for Institute, but he's been a marketing specialist, international keynote speaker for years. So he's our guy right here. So James.
Hey, y'all. How y'all doing? Good evening, everybody. And Stan pretty much said everything, but it's been a pleasure working on this project. I've been running AMPS International since 1993, which is a speaking, training, and consulting company. And we started the AMPS Entrepreneurship and Leadership Institute in 2003, just helping young people to understand what business is, how to start a business, and then how to create new opportunities for themselves. We're most proud of, we just were in St. Croix, and there was a group of 5 who invented an app for farmers in St. Croix and St. Thomas. And it's an app that helps farmers get together during disasters. And the USDA just funded them a $50,000 to continue to research that app. So that was pretty cool for us and for them, for high school kids making money to develop stuff, which was pretty cool. But this product, RxAir360, has been a joy to work with because of the insight that Stan has brought and the patent that Stan has brought, and mostly because we have a CEO in Diallo Watts who understands what work is about. He understands what entrepreneurship is about. He's met with a lot of people. I've seen him work day and night trying to get this thing off the ground and talking with all of us to try to get all the marketing materials together and moving forward with it to where we are at this point, and hopefully launching it with new investors, which would be a great opportunity, not just for RxAir360, but for the people who are actually going to use this product. So we're looking forward to seeing where Diallo, as the CEO, takes this company. I think he has everybody behind him in trying to make sure that this thing is launched the proper way. And it's amazing that, he's always in touch with the attorneys, and we want to do things one way, but the attorneys say, no, this is the right way to do it. So Diallo gets behind it and make sure that everybody is behind doing it the right way. So we definitely appreciate what he does. So I'm gonna turn it over to Diallo and he can make his presentation, but we definitely appreciate what he does.
All right. Thanks a lot, James. Right now, I'm going to start out on the presentation. I'll share the screen so you guys can see. All right. So I'm going to skip through some of the stuff as Stan eloquently got through some of it for me. So we're going to start it right here. All right. All right. So if you were told anything about Guadalupe, we're letting them know that we started the Series A round of funding, which was 15 million. The first round we did was the Series Pre-Seed, but that was just friends and family. We had to get that cleaned up because we didn't know any of the rules. I've been an entrepreneur, but I never started a C Corp that had shareholders and the whole nine. So it was a lot of the learning curve is long. Then our lawyers told us that, hey, having more than 35 non-credit investments, you have way more disclosure that you have to do. And so as they were cleaning that up in the last 3 or 4 months, this is where we are now, where we're gonna start Series A, and favors Dr. Vitamin. We talked over the board, and we extended closing Series Pre-Seed round for Friday. So on Friday, we'll close out Pre-Seed round, and then Monday, we'll start our Series A round, where that'll be what I talk about. So presentation is for Series A, but I'm going to let you know the differences between Series Pre-Seed and Series A. Series Pre-Seed, as we close that round out, it would still have to be accredited investors. And right now, each share is worth 10 cents. And then when we open up Series A, it's worth 15 cents. So our company valuation is $150 million. So we were selling 10% of the company for $15 million. So that's what this is. in the first round, of course, you get a discount, so anything earlier will come at the bigger discount. So after this, I just wanna step on this real quick. After the Series A is over, and Phyllis has been talking about prototype, once the prototype is done, we'll have to close our Series A round, no matter where we are, because we'll have to close it, and then we'll have to revalue the company, and that will be much higher. So let's say it's 10 cents a day, 15 cents next week, it could really be 25, 50 cents thereafter. If there's a rounding, because I'm gonna go over the financials and everything that we need to get going. And our projections are basically the need for 15 million will take us to the end of next year. So we're trying to make sure that we're not on a shoestring budget, we can get everything done, and then between that time, we'll actually be generating revenue for this, so hopefully we won't even need the whole thing, but we wanna do it so that we have contingency, in place just in case there's some slowness by the FDA or whatever like happens. All right, so start on here. Oh crap. Had it in earlier. Here we go. So this, I don't know if you all seen it, but this is our animation that Dr. Stan had created years ago as he got the rendering done for what his vision was, as he just presented it to some graphic artists.
Preparing for hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Most pacemakers are allowed in the chamber. The hyperbaric technologist will need to know if you are taking any medications, including non-prescription drugs. You are advised not to drink alcohol or carbonated beverages for 4 hours prior to treatment. No cosmetics, perfumes, hair preparations, deodorants, wigs, jewelry, or electronic devices are allowed in the chamber. Smoking and the use of tobacco products interferes with the body's ability to transport oxygen. Therefore, your doctor will work with you on techniques to help stop smoking during the treatment period. For your safety, you will be given a 100% cotton gown to wear in the chamber. The air pressure inside a hyperbaric oxygen chamber is about 2 to 3 times greater than the normal pressure in the atmosphere. This hyperbaric, or high pressure dose of oxygen, helps your blood carry more oxygen to your organs and tissues to promote wound healing. It also activates the white blood cells to fight infection. Approved protocols are prescribed so that patients do not require longer treatments. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy is a treatment in which the patient breathes 100% pure oxygen while inside a pressurized chamber. Protocols so that patients do not require longer treatments. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy is a treatment in which the patient breathes 100% pure oxygen while inside a pressurized chamber. Your physician's office hyperbaric technician will let you know how many treatments you will require based on your condition. The air pressure inside hyperbaric oxygen chamber is about 2 to 3 times greater than the normal pressure in the atmosphere. Following your treatment plan is the single most important factor in your healing. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy may be used as part of the treatment for certain conditions, including the following: non-healing wounds, such as diabetic foot ulcers, otherwise known as diabetic wounds, the lower extremity, DWLE, chronic bone infections, chronic refractory osteomyelitis, post-radiation complications, osteoradionecrosis, and soft tissue radionecrosis, injury to skin or bone as a side effect from radiation therapy, non-healing skin grafts and flaps, crush injuries, sudden sensory neural hearing loss, central retinal artery occlusion, post-surgical healing. RxAir360 clinical hyperbaric medical device content.
All right. So, I'm sure a lot of you already know about hyperbaric oxygen therapy, so this probably would be the thing that you all needed the most, but that's a nice animation that kind of describes to the layman, like real quick, what it is that we're doing, what we're working with, and an idea of what a rendering of our device would look like. So I'm just gonna go with some highlights and then we'll deep dive into some of these features. So right now, as we've mentioned, RxAir360 Inc., we have a US patented class 2 medical device. It's recognized for healing all around the world. This is a ripe opportunity with very lucrative cash flow and an extremely early break-even point. We've raised $650,000 so far in the pre-seed round of funding, and we're raising $15 million in the Series A round. We're ready to transition from engineering to a fully commercialized product. We have a highly skilled and talented team with industry experience leading this effort. Physicians who purchase the $500,000 device can make more than $750,000 annually by providing this service to patients that they already treat. Now, the company makes $300,000 per device and expects over $1.5 billion in sales in the first full year of manufacturing. So again, I said this offering is 10% of equity into the company. And if you're astute investors, I'm sure you know this, the PE ratio for the US medical equipment industry averaged over 60 so far in 2023. Look earlier, it's over 75 right now. So that has an effect on merger and acquisition and the amount of the company work. So the next thing, I think we all had a real good introduction from Dr. Stan about this with, this is a monoplace chamber. I can do this, man. This is a monoplace chamber with the gurney. And now there's a 7-foot gurney and a 7-foot chamber. There's 14 feet, and then there has to be 3 feet between the front of the unit and the back of the unit. And that's why he said they would have to have a 10 by 20 office if they wanted to fit inside of the doctor's office. And that's, uncommon. Multi-place chambers are what you typically see in hospitals where they're the hood, where they receive the oxygen that way. And this is just one example of hyperbaric treatment where this person was about to get foot amputated within less than 24 hours. This is after 3 weeks, 26 hyperbaric treatments. And this is after 6 weeks, 50 hyperbaric treatments. So the healing becomes evident. And that's kind of what it is. So now what we did was we invented a new patient-centric medical device to bring oxygen therapy closer to patients. We have 18 unique device claims alive in our patent. And some of those features are, we can install in standard physician's examination, like we said. We have a bioexometer feature. Now this is mainly for insurance purposes. It includes 4 biometric features that guarantees insurance providers the only trained qualified technologists are putting the patients in the device and this actual patient being treated. There's many articles of people, Medicare fraud or issues where people, get billed and it's the sister that's in the chamber and not yourself. So we want to make sure that doctors are protected where they know for sure that in their billing, this is not an issue. They also talked about the children, and this is reflected in our patent. So the patient is seated in an upright position, ergonomically, designed for comfort. This alleviates claustrophobia. And then there's additional patent claim to accommodate an adult in the chamber with their child. So it's going to be a pull-out seat. So if your child has autism and they're scared, one of the things that Dr. Stan has mentioned is a lot of children don't finish the treatment. So they get in there, it's helping them, but it's too scary. Like anybody been in an MRI machine, they feel like too closed up, too claustrophobic. So this is just like, if they're feeling that, at least now they're sitting up, at least now the viewport was larger, and now the parents in there. So that was everything blends together with what we're doing. And again, you mentioned additive manufacturing. We just covered the whole gamut, like can't duplicate what we're doing for the next 20 years. So we always ask ourselves 2 questions. 1, can we produce it? And 2, can we sell it? That's at the nuts and bolts of everything. So part of the can we produce it question that we're going to answer is we partnered up with Electro Impact. We're in direct communication with the president of the company, and we're working on an agreement now to establish the entire design, prototype, manufacturing. Manufacturing is something that we were going to do, and this is where the agreement is taking place. They want to actually do it. They actually have already built out line with robots and AI sensors that can actually produce more than what we even have in our projections. So it's gonna be even more mind blowing than what I'm about to explain to you. And now they'll become one of the largest integrators of aircraft assembly lines in the world. So some of their customer base includes Airbus, Boeing, Kawasaki, Mitsubishi, Spirit, Bombardier, and Embraer. And here's a little video describing one of their continuous fiber 3D printing devices that they've already built. So one of the things that the president was so excited to work with us on is the fact that they had to build these 3D printers correctly. So they had 8 of them that they had to deliver to Boeing. They had enough materials and the design to say, hey, we can just make an extra. So they made 9, sold 8, and the 9th one was just sitting there for the last 2 years, and they were $10 million each to Boeing. He said, I got this $10 million piece of equipment that's just sitting here, and nobody's building 3D printing things this large. Now, I'm not saying nothing is large because they're 3D printers that are doing buildings, but there's a large gap between buildings and houses and submarines and aircrafts and other devices that they make. So nothing's in between. So he's like, hey, this is great. Let's move forward. So they're energetic and in charge, and they started May 20th is when they're going to be working on the prototype. We've already been going back and forth with designs and materials. So here's a little brief presentation on that. So that's the electoral impact. Like I said, we claimed that we're going to be this $1 billion company. We had to work with the big boys. So the next questions we got to answer. You met the CMO already. Next question is, can we sell it? So our opportunity is to use independent sales reps to incentivize them by giving them 5% commission on each device that they set to their doctors. When they do that, they'll be presented to the doctors how we came up with that number, how you can make $750,000 on a device that you paid $500,000 for. And as everybody knows, we can use the tax code 179 to alleviate some of those costs. So now we say number of sessions per day. This is just a simple math. Number of sessions per day. Let's say you have 8 patients and you're over for 8 hours for a 1-hour session. And let's use 20 working days. A lot of people use 21, which would make the numbers higher, but I just want to be simple. 20 working days per month is be 160 sessions that you'd be providing per month. And the suggested copay charge per session, as we mentioned, is $400. It ranges above this number throughout the country for medical hyperbaric therapy, but we just want to be round numbers to give people an idea of what this would come out to be. So that'd be an estimated revenue per month of $64,000 and $768,000 per year. So right now I have some lease charges and some direct and indirect expenses related to it, because what we do is we come in and we train 2 of the staff to be the technologists that will actually be the persons that will put the patients in the chain. So that means the doctor does not take away from their surgery, does not take away from their patients. This is just to be separate. So with those costs, we estimate physicians' net ROI in a year based on a yearly lease of $60,000, 796%, which is astronomical. So again, we talk about the physician device market. We have over 433,000 physicians already treated patients with insurance-approved conditions in the 15 different specialties that we mentioned in the animation. So we did this illustration just to point out that like we can 3 target markets and orthopedics, oncology, and I pronounced it right. Otorhinology. Oh yeah, otolaryngology. Those are 3 of one of the major specialties that we can target. That's not to say if plastic surgeon says, hey, I want a device, we're going to say no. So again, at $500,000 per device, we're talking about over $216 billion in total and $24.5 billion in sales in our target market. Again, our business model, the production design includes additive manufacturing with AI sensors, robotics that will deliver up to 3,000 medical devices per year. So we have a sales price of $500,000, as I mentioned, $200,000 for manufacturing costs with a net profit of $300,000. And the manufacturing cost includes labor, overhead parts, and the 5% sales commission I mentioned. Our initial cap hits, creating a CAD prototype, purchasing parts, everything else. We had purchasing a 3D printing machine, but Electro Impact will help solve that. So the next thing we talk about financial projections over the next 5 years. We hope to be in production by at least the 4th quarter of this year, but if we can just say we'll have a full year of 2024, our sales numbers, we had 3,000 devices with $500,000 each, $1.5 billion in revenue, and a gross margin of $900 million, with our B2B of $600 million, and a net retained income cash profits of $450 million. And this is just going to be on paper because, as I'll explain later, we're going to have a dividends program where a lot of our profits are going to go back to our original shareholders. Then we have our cumulative free cash flow over $500 million a year, and then our normal valuations will be 10 times that. So I mentioned our valuation now being $150 million. At the end of year 1, we're talking 15 billion. So, and then again, as we go all the way out to 2027, honestly, don't think we're gonna get there because of merger and acquisition before then. But at that point, we're still talking about a $60 billion valuation, almost something that is worth $150 million today. So as you can see, it's just like Apple, Google, whatever. You started at the very beginning and it was worth pennies a share, and that was worth hundreds of dollars per share. Now I told you about our previous investments. This is our capital plan for use of funds for the next round, and it includes the engineering, the brand building, the marketing, the accounting, hiring more suite staff, compensation for our leaders, insurance, logistics, tax planning, and then our contingency. So there's a lot that goes into actually getting the company more prepared for actual production once we get started. And that's where we get our $15 million. Again, you met, meeting me now today. Pleasure meeting you all. Diallo Watts, Dr. Cross, Dr. Stan mentioned him. He's in Texas still doing surgeries. One of the first to do LASIK eye surgery in Texas. James Amps, the CMO, you met him. Richard Farmer was the guy that you mentioned. That was the safety guy and worked for the different manufacturing companies that already produced hyperbaric chambers in the United States. I know one of the questions earlier that Keith brought up was like how different it would be from the other chambers that are around. We're not reinventing the wheel as far as like administering the pressure, getting it out, and all of the technical stuff that goes around the chamber. We're just having a new design for the actual pressure list. So all of those things, we're going to follow the same pathway that's already out there. Mr. Lyle Holden, he's our CTO, Chief Technical Officer, and Ms. Natasha Watts is our Chief Financial Officer. So again, with this, we have over a century's worth of experience in entrepreneurship, medicine, hyperbaric oxygen treatment, manufacturing, hyperbaric safety, engineering, directing organizations, finance, and marketing on our team. So with this diverse group, we've known each other and worked on different projects separately, and we'll be the founders who take this product to market. This next video that I want to share is a great video, and I believe I shared it with Dr. Wiseman. This talks about, this is Joe Namath, everybody knows Joe Namath. Talk about how he reverses brain damage using hyperbaric oxygen. Now, one thing he didn't mention in this video that he mentioned before is it took him, he's done 120 dives total for his mental health, for his mental healing, the healing of his brain. But he said it wasn't until after 55 to 60 dives when he actually started to feel comfortable. He was really afraid and didn't want to continue the treatment because of the claustrophobic effect. Jay Leno was just in one and he called it a glass coffin. So it's not just the fact that the therapy and the healing, it's the fact that people are not comfortable while they're inside. So I'll play this video now.
Would you tell a young kid today to go into football, or is it too damn dangerous with the concussions and everything? You've had concussions, true?
I wouldn't tell a kid not to. Let me put it that way. If a guy has a dream, if he really has a passion and he wants to do it, yes. Want my son to go there because of the head injuries that we all had.
How many concussions have you had?
I had a minimum of 5.
Wow.
That's what I'm talking about. Lights out, smelling salts and whatever.
Jeez.
And because I saw a teammate of mine deteriorating over a period of 4 years, along with 3 other teammates of mine, and I were at our football camp. He was our offensive lineman, David Herman, and he'd come in and he'd tell Winston, John, myself, how he was so afraid of what he was going through. His mind, he was losing it. He'd forget things. It scared him. He'd come in again the next football camp, worse. The next time, his son's sitting with him. I saw how this fear was in this tough son of boy, and he had a fear going. So it dawned on me, I said, I need to find out about myself. It behooves me, Joe, to find out about myself. And it behooves me to do it for my children too. So I called the hospital out in Florida, and I talked to the doctors at the local hospital. And I went over, met with them, and I took a brain scan. Now, with that SPECT scan, they could see the cells on the left side of my head from the forehead back here, not getting them.
Wow.
They were darker than the rest.
Which is not normal.
No, that's right. And so we started with hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And after 40 dives of hyperbaric oxygen therapy, those dark cells started to lighten up a bit.
Really?
Took another SPECT scan and cognitive test. Then I went back, I took another 40 dives. We came back, took another SPECT scan, that brain looked normal all over.
No kidding.
Took another cognitive test, went back, did another 40 dives. I did 120 dives in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. And then 2 years later, I took another SPECT scan. The year after that, it started in 2012, and my brain is healthy.
Why is this not a bigger deal? What you're saying right now could help plenty of
Millions upon millions, the veterans alone that get concussions,
Yes.
explosions, the children that fall off bicycles and hit their head.
Gone to the NFL and said, guys, you guys got to go look into this hyperbaric stuff. I mean, have you tried to, is there research on this thing?
Yes.
And you've done that.
Yeah.
Yet they're being ignored.
You know, I don't know that there's a stadium in our country that has a hyperbaric oxygen unit in there. It's almost admitting that the sport is damaging.
Right.
To lead the players to this at this time that sign their deals and go to play in college, you take on the understanding that there's that potential danger. We didn't know that that was a potential danger.
Again, just mentioning different 15 medical specialties already approved by hyperbaric oxygen by insurance in the United States. Let's go over a few of them: cosmetic reconstruction, ophthalmology, pain management, neurology, orthopedics, wound care, dental, oral surgery, oncology, podiatry, infectious disease, oral max, plastics, and more. So now our competitive landscape, I mentioned it earlier. A lot of times you see hyperbaric on anywhere. Secrets is one of the top. Paramedical, Pan American, hyperbarics and PCCI are more of the top 4 competitors. I called each one of them, and I called them up and I said, hey, I'm opening a wound care clinic. I want to get one of your devices. And each one of them said, okay, great, which model? And it was kind of talking through it, and they were like, on the bottom floor, and then they were saying, it's like, yeah, okay, all right, we're gonna be opening in about 6 months. They're like, okay, you can't get your one for like 9 months. That was like the closest time frame, right? So right now, the model is you order one, we build it, and it takes us, 3 to 4 months to build one. So that's the industry that we're in right now. That's what hyperbaric changes are, because it's not for all those many physician offices, like I mentioned before. It's for hospitals, it's for wound care clinics, it's for outpatient centers that have the space. So we have that one in here, you can just go to Secrets, plug one up in here, and then, you have to, of course, the fire code had to wall drilling out. One of the other things that I didn't mention about our patent is that special thing that I talked about is that 100% oxygen that's coming in has to be expelled some way. It has to go somewhere. And if you don't know, oxygen is highly flammable by itself. So any spark, anything that can happen, it can cause fires. Now, what this happens is we, on our device, we've had what we call a nitrogen scrubber, which converts the air. We breathe 78% nitrogen and about 21% oxygen. So it converts the oxygen before it expels out of the device, converts it into nitrogen, and then now it's odorless, colorless gas that's non-flammable. So this is another one about what patients want HVAC therapy. Of course, we know about the ones who actually have ailments that their physician can treat, but then there's also a segment of our population that need it for the off-label issue. And so this is one example of a company, they're out of Israel. They're called the Aviv Clinic. They're expanding in the US. They have an office in Dubai and one in Boca, Florida. And right now, each treatment is $1,000 per session, and the patient must sign up for 60 treatments. Insurance is not accepted, and the total cost of $60,000 must be paid upfront in cash, no insurance, no whatever, right? And so the waiting list is still in the thousands to secure a place in their treatment. So,
it's the first clinic in the world. This clinic is focused on helping people through the process of aging, living in a lifestyle. It covers every single aspect of one's health: brain function training, memory, attention span, executive function, nutrition, exercise, and really develop training that's going to help you to get and physically.
From perspective, aging is a disease. In order to achieve regeneration, we are taking people into a hyperbaric chamber, increase blood oxygenation to high level, and then do a fast decline. This decline triggers all the regenerative cascade that we need in order to rejuvenate the tissue.
This custom designed hyperbaric suite is part of one of the largest centers in the world. Knowing that our clients were going to be spending 60 sessions over a 12-week period, everything is designed around service, safety, and comfort.
First thing we want to do is to visualize the microstructure of the brain in order to actually evaluate how the brain is built and how it functions. This is the process of aging brain. The more white cells you have translates cognitive. Based on this cognitive profile, we are able to build a personalized plan to work for. Is it your memory? Is it your attention? Is it your processing speed?
Based on their cognitive strengths, based on their cognitive weaknesses. And we develop an individualized plan and give them brain exercise tasks to do in our hyperbaric suite. Right? Doing these exercises in this individual, going to get all that much more robust and improvement.
Via this step, clients will complete a brain exercise each and every day. It's really going to push their limits and maximize function.
The other thing we're doing is we want to see how efficient is your
The exercise test, it allows us to look at the client's function and their own function. And we are just monitoring those two organs are functioning. The intensity of the test continues and increases.
This program is not only for the hyperbaric chambers, but the comprehension of getting nutritionists and exercise physiologists, physical therapists, and as a group, we bring all of the data, this land is forward, the way you eat, the way you exercise, the way you do everything. And this is the type of investment that every human being should actually make.
They all have this enthusiasm for what you're doing, so it's easy to keep the momentum up.
How could we not smile when we walk in the door and we're greeted with a big smile?
Not only do they get to know your health physically, but they get to know you and you're given a whole care team. It's a whole program, and I'll have to say I'm really glad that I thought myself through it.
It is to have an opportunity to lead a team that can transcend healthcare. You really have the opportunity to change someone's life, give them the chance to live a very good lifestyle as long as they were willing to invest themselves.
So from a personal standpoint, when I was introduced to Dr. Stan in 2014, and he was asking about the engineering aspect, my background is engineering, by the way. I don't know if that really looked that up, but when that happened, my father was beginning to decline dementia. So as far as research goes, that's why he was like, you gotta do this, because I was really involved and really trying to figure out a way to, help my father with decline. And I never got him in the chamber, but I just, that's just been where my personal passion has been. Notwithstanding being children, I have 5 myself, so I don't have a soft spot for children, but I also worry about the college. Yeah, so I think we already went through a lot of the background and the intro, and the offering, what I mentioned here. Again, 10% equity this round. Student investors who are looking to participate in a hyper-growth company that will have revenues of over $1 billion per year with our projected manufacturing sales will experience returns of at least 10x in 3 years, or exponential returns through a NASDAQ listing or merger and acquisition. The PE ratio for the U.S. medical equipment industry has been over an average of 51.5 over the last 3 years, and has averaged over 60 in 2023. And just gonna give you updated numbers from the day. What that means is, if our revenue is $1 billion, when you even multiply by that 60 number, and again, at 1 billion shares, each share would be 60. If we sold it for 60 billion, then it'd be $60 per share. And again, you can get it at 10 cents or 15 cents. I have some calculations already, but you can do some math in your head. How many would you get if you get something that's 10% that's even worth $25 5 years or less? So anyway, in summary, again, we just call this project Union, because it really attacks all 3 phases. And by that, we say it increases accessibility to patients. It generates additional revenue to physicians without taking away from surgeries or office visits. And the shareholders enjoy astronomical profits due to the ability to mass produce our product with innovative added manufacturing. And we don't have competition in our new niche market. And again, when the prototype is finished, we close this round of funding, and the value of the company will be increased. And if we need additional funding, it won't be 15 cents per share at that point in time. And investing now locks you in a lower valuation. That's my presentation, and I'll start to take some questions now, and I'll stop this part of the screen share. Okay. All right, any questions?
I have one. So right now, are you planning you're doing US sales, so you're gonna expand international sales?
We will not for this device. We had a second patent that's pending that, the final filing will be next week, but that one's a larger and global market. That I did. I could have Dr. Stan, talk about it. We still would need an NDA since it hadn't. We got approved for the patent.
And how far, I know you said patents approved on this, and you said you're pending FDA approval, where are you with that process?
Okay, so with the FDA approval, once the prototype is finished, then we send it to what they call a pre-certified 10K FDA program. And they actually do all of the testing and functionality. They send their results to the FDA, and then the FDA goes off the 510K FDA process. Each one of those could be between 2 to 3 months. So prototype probably early June. No, not early, probably June, and then pre-cert FDA, 510K FDA, and then FDA after. So that's why I say we can be done for the fourth quarter, but with holidays or there's low, I'm not sure. So that's why I'm saying like for sure we'll probably be in production in 24. One of the things with the FDA, we cannot, I make it clear, we'll make this clear, I'll say it 10 times in the presentation. We cannot sell or market this device until we have clearance from FDA. So anything that I'm telling you about is not telling you how I can sell you this device. This is strictly just for investment purposes right now. Once we get clearance, then we sell and market, and you can tell me about who needs it and who will buy it at that point in time.
How is your device, this prototype, different from the portable ones that are on the market now? They do have portable ones that are smaller than those glass chambers.
Right.
But they probably still too large to fit in the doctor's office. That's the big difference.
Right. So with that, a lot of the ones I know that they mentioned Oxydelta and there's several other companies that have called wellness chambers.
Mhm.
So the wellness chamber, and the ATA only goes up to 1.3, and is mainly, it's only FDA approved for. You know what? Let me have Dr. Stan. He tells
Yeah,
me
well,
better. But the amount.
Okay, well, there's a couple of issues. Number one, the product, in order to meet the FDA, must have be able to go to 3 atmospheres of pressure. None of those devices are medical devices, and they do not. It also has to have oxygen. None of those devices have 100% oxygen. Most of them use oxygen generators to produce the oxygen, not 100% oxygen from a medical tank. So they don't code, and they basically, according to physiology, do not provide any improvement to anybody. The other issue, some of those products called hyperbaric are actually made out of fabric and bags. And unfortunately, I think it was only a few months ago in North Carolina, a company called RxAir360 which was a health center, used one inappropriately, and there was a fire and the people perished. Not in a regular medical hyperbaric chamber, though.
That would be my next question. What is the source of the oxygen? You say oxygen generators. What? You generate or extract oxygen from the air?
No. Well, no, we don't use oxygen generators. It's an oxygen generator is an electronic device that produces some degree of oxygen, but it doesn't produce any more than you breathe 21% oxygen right now in the air you breathe. The rest is all nitrogen. An oxygen generator just produces more 21% oxygen. It doesn't do anything. And so those are not approved.
Yeah, you need 100% on at least 2 atmospheres of pressure.
And yes.
Then that means you're gonna need another room storing your oxygen tanks that you're gonna pump into the chamber. Don't you need oxygen tanks?
Yeah, you need some
oxygen.
Yes, the physician's office is able to put the oxygen tanks in like a closed closet or something like that. It doesn't need to be in a separate room. It just has to have the safety devices for that room, which would include whatever fire suppression system or hand. There's like 3 different things that are required for, a medical building in general. This doesn't require much more than that, but it's definitely, the tanks are always put in the physician's office. And if they needed to have a cover around it or something, as long as the material is not flammable. So you wouldn't want to put a fabric to cover it. You'd use some non-flammable material. There's all kinds of doors, like louver doors that are made out of non-flammable plastics, or you could use metal louver doors, which are not going to be flammable. They don't support combustion. They burn in a fire, but they wouldn't support combustion, so that would code.
Keep going. You said that the average, 5 treatment time is about an hour. Normal for most wound care centers now, they're doing like 90 minutes. 90 minutes for wound care.
Well, what happens is, well, you could do 2 hours. You could do 2 hours as well. The issue is the published documentation is you need to do 60 minutes. We are not the practitioner. We cannot tell the doctor how much time to do a patient, because according to the severity of the conditions, it may require more, but we would never know every patient that goes in. So we are quoting what the time is to get a medical improvement for the tissue to absorb and maintain oxygen until the next treatment. So a 1 hour codes for a medical payment. So we use that as the general acceptable rule, but we cannot go to the doctor and tell them how to treat a patient.
And you said possibly do 8 treatments a day, but there's gonna be, if you only have 1 machine, there's gonna be downtime between each patient. It takes time to pressurize the capsule, which is not time included in the dive treatment. It may take 10, 15 minutes to get that 2 or 3 atmospheres of pressure. Then you're going to hold that for an hour. Then you have to slowly decompress so the person doesn't get air injuries and have a stroke or something. Exactly. So you got to slowly bring it down. So 10, 15 minutes before the hour, 10, 15 minutes after the hour. So that's an hour and a half minimum. And then you say you might be doing 8 treatments a day in the doctor's 8-hour workday. So between that downtime between each one, you probably can only do maybe 5 or 6. And then you have a patient making a copay. You said probably about $400 per treatment. It's very expensive. When somebody needs 30 or 40 dimes and they got to pay $400, 30 or 40 times, how much money is it?
Well, it's according to how you look at it. If the same patient right now had to go to the hospital for an outpatient facility, as an outpatient, the patient has to pay 20% of the co-payment for the hospital, and then the physician bills separately for their code, and the patient has to pay 20% for that as well. It's going to exceed the $400.
And then a lot of these, like I said, this is just an example that we've come up as an outline. So if it's more or less, like I said, once we sell the device, the doctor can actually say like, hey, we had empathy. Just trying to put them in there for free. I wouldn't charge $200. So they want to send it out. If they want to, have it expired, whatever that is.
No, I think if you don't mind a moment, I think realistically, very few doctors' office open at 9 o'clock. If you have therapies, there's many physicians, especially the ones that have surgical practices. They're going to probably open much earlier according to what they want to do. But it wouldn't surprise me that they open at 7 or 7:30 or 8 o'clock. And it wouldn't surprise me if they stay until 5:30, 6 or 6:30 in order to accommodate what you correctly expressed as the time to get to pressure, to atmospheres of pressure, and to get back to normal. Also, to clean the inside, we have a method of cleaning the inside in 7 to 8 minutes. I don't think that we're trying to compress 8 hours of treatments in 8 hours. We're just estimating the physician should easily be able to do 8 one-hour sessions a day. The 1-hour session is directly related to the treatment session. And as correctly as you described, would not include the pre and post full treatment period. It would be an additional amount of time in the physician's office during the day.
Is it daily, Monday through Friday per patient? I mean, this. So you come
Yes,
every day.
I understand Dr. is in session now, in the middle of therapy now. So, I mean, maybe he can speak to it, as a patient.
Yeah, well, they only week, and it is Monday through Friday.
Okay. Let me just let me throw one more point in so that you don't realize it. The hospital has a billing code that only a JACO approved hospital could use for hyperbaric. So we'll just call that code A. When you get a treatment outside the hospital, no one else in the United States could use code A, no matter where your chamber is, if it's not in the JACO hospital. And so there's no billing code for the equipment. And then in an outpatient facility, if it's an independent physician working there, which it generally is a service, the physician bills separately, right? If the physician's an employee of the hospital, they cannot. So when the patient is in an outpatient, they pay the copay of the hospital fee, which is much higher, and also to the independent physician fee, 2 separate codes. When they're in the physician's office, if they choose to use their insurance, all they pay is the physician code, because no physician could use a hospital bill code. So it's a combination of, instead of paying 2 of any amount, it's only 1 of a minimum amount. And if the patients, put it this way, I don't mean to, I'm not laughing at you, I'm laughing at myself for not saying it earlier. Right now, I have not found a hospital in the many, many months that have open space to treat people. There's waiting lists because they just think about it. If a hospital had a monoplace chamber, because they have the space to put it, and they could treat 8 people a day, and those 8 people have to come, let's say, for a month, it's 8 people out of a whole hospital. They're backed up all the time. So these physicians are sending their patients to the hospital. Now they've got all of these patients. The patient wants the treatment. Everybody in the world could not afford this. There's no question about it. But there are large numbers of people who are employed or that have Medicare, and their Medicare pays 80%, or Medicaid pays for it as well. And US government insurance pays for it. And then they have a copay. The copay is minimal, but they have to pay it in a hospital. They do not have to pay it in the doctor's office. So they're only paying the copay to the doctor, but cumulatively, we put it this way, we're giving you an example of what the doctor could charge. If a physician wants to charge $500 in the community they're in, just like Aviv charges $1,000 in their community, we're not going to tell them what to charge. If the doctor wanted to, if they're in a very poor income community and wanted to charge $300, it's not any of our business. We don't participate in that revenue. So the physician could do what they feel like in the community they're in, and if they're doing cash, they do not have to legally charge the same amount for everyone. So if they know they have a person that's well-to-do, they could charge more, and maybe someone who, only when you have insurance, you have to charge the same amount because you got a billing code.
These are medical only indications right now.
I'm sorry.
No non-medical indications, just medical indications. I mean, when you go to self-market this, because it looks like the Aviv company is probably doing non-medical.
Everything. Well, I don't like it. If you heard something, if you heard me say about the off label, one of the things that the doctors have come to the conclusion of if you bring the oxygen down and then increase it again, that has shown more healing. Well, if you coding for medical, it has to always be above 2. So if you go beneath that, then you can't bill for insurance if it's under 2 at ACA. So that's one of the reasons why they're off label, and then also they're just doing, cognitive and the kind of reverse aging thing.
Mhm. So basically, that's what they're saying, whoever you sold to can decide to get off label.
It's different, doesn't have to be designed.
Yes, exactly. Like I said, you can have one, and as long as the physician is writing a prescription, then they can do. They can, like you said, they can do all cash, they can do insurance, they can, however they decide. No, like you said, that would be up to us how we are involved in their revenue, we just sell the device.
There's a lot of indications. I think it's the new fountain of youth.
That's why I believe in promoting it, and I believe it. Yeah. I'm ready to get in myself, so.
I mean, because every tissue, every cell in the body needs sauce. And as you age, you get less perfusion of.
Exactly. Climate change is really that sounds sucks.
Hey, Diallo, was the doctor gonna talk about his treatment? Was that what he was getting into?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Right.
Yeah.
Good.
Basically, osteomyelitis is a wound healing, and I've been treating patients with this condition for 35 years. I'm using HBO. My patients, I'm an oral maxillofacial surgeon, so our patients, when they develop tumors or cancer of the facial bones, and they have wind up having radiation oncology. The indication I was introduced to it is for, Dr. Rivers is a radiation oncologist.
Okay.
One of my colleagues, I actually have sent some treatments to her for osteomyelitis. But, I was introduced to that in my residency program about 40 years ago, so we've been using it for a long time. And like at least about once a year or once every couple of years, I do have a patient with that, who's undergone cancer treatment and radiation. They wind up getting, it decreases the blood supply to the bone and the soft tissue. And if you have a wound there, a tooth extraction, something doesn't heal well, the tissue gets necrotic, you get like a chronic osteomyelitis in the bone, which can be very devastating. You wind up losing a big section of the bone, have to get big large reconstructive surgery. And then you can't even really do surgery on the good because you don't have good obstacles. So before you do anything, even debridement, you have to have at least 20 or 30 dives in HBO treatment before you can even have any surgery done.
Wow.
To reconstruct the jaw. So after the 20 or 30 dives, then you will do the surgery, you have much better perfusion for healing, and then you can do the reconstructive surgery after that.
Okay.
So that's been my experience with it for the last 35, 40 years, is using HBO. But unfortunately, recently I became a patient for certain patients. So we developed a chronic infection, and I kept babying it, taking antibiotics, babying it, thinking it was gonna go away and it was gonna be okay. And then after a while, I said, oh wow, something's not right. I had lymphadenopathy, the jaw was constantly hurting all the time, and the antibiotics I was on just empirically didn't seem to be getting rid of. So a colleague of mine said, hey, why don't you try HBO, knock this thing out. So I changed the antibiotic, did a little surgery, debrided it and stuff, and started, I had like 10 dives now. And the lymphadenopathy is gone, pain and tenderness is gone. Wow.
Very good.
At doctors.
I got it.
And I've been sending patients there for years, you know, and now I gotta take my own medicine.
That's pretty cool, man.
I'm excited about it. So how many you got again? I was gonna do about another 10.
Another 10, 20. 20 times.
Just make sure that bone marrow done and that's still healing. And I won't know the results of that until I finish the HBO. Okay. Make sure my bone graft is going well.
Great
Well,
test.
I'm having a good radiation oncologist. I haven't had to see too many people.
Yeah, it's inclusively fast.
See, I remember I did that, so you're
Yeah.
all right, so one last thing I wanted to go over. was in our first round of funding. Hold on.
So yeah, I'm getting clear enough, if we don't get that inside.
Oh, that's what the problem was. I needed to end the slideshow. Good. Sorry. So in our first round of funding, I'm going to show you the numbers from our first round. Since you have up until Friday, but this was the document. We would give presentations. They would hear about a lot of times we had got more into what is our before we even got to the device and all of the features and what we're doing and who we are and what we're using money for and the whole nine. So the thing that they would look at the most and the longest was what the money looked like. So this is real small. So I'm just going to tell you what this saying. So like this was in the pre-seed round. Again, like I said, it was 10 cents per share. We talk about let's say an investment of $100,000, that would be 1 million shares. Then we saying that like during our profits and retained earnings, you mentioned like per quarter. So per quarter we'll do dividend profit sharing. So what will happen is, let's say we're at $150 million in profit in a quarter, and the board will decide, where we are, what we're going to need moving forward for running the operation and for getting new material. Let's say we're at $100 million in the best case scenario. So we'll decide $100 million in profits are what we're going to use as dividend profit sharing. So then that would be 10%. 10 cents. And then a shareholder payout would be $100,000. So that means your original investment of $100,000, you would get $100,000 per quarter. Let's say if it's a slower month or a more likely scenario, it may be $50,000 per quarter. So let's say in a full year, we're doing the smallest amount, you're still getting $200,000 back off of an original $100,000 investment. Now, again, like I say, merger and acquisition, I'm using smaller numbers. I'm saying it's the best case, but we're seeing the numbers going to be a little bit different in this, but $50 billion merger and acquisition, shareholder payout for a $100,000 investor, end up being $50 million from $50 price per share. Now, if it's $25 billion, then I'll say it's only $25 million payout. Now, that's it. Like I said, I don't know why they keep looking at it for so long, but that was the document that everyone wanted to see and wanted to digest and wanted to figure out how much money I want to put in, how much the projection looked like. And those are the numbers in the pre-seed round. The next round, which starts next week. Same thing. Like again, I'll go from the top. $15 million investment. One person wants to do 15 million. That's 100 million shares. 10%, that would be $10 million paid out at the end of each quarter on $100 million in profits and return earnings, or $5 million per quarter. So they're still taking a $15 million investment. And if everything is going great, you're talking about $40 million over the course of 1 year. Then as we go down further in an M&A situation, $15 million investment end up being $5 billion return on the 10% at $50 price per share. And in the $25 billion M&A, we're talking about $2.5 billion. So it's not, I'm sorry. People always ask, like, what if somebody says, I'll give you $5 billion of the company now, I say I'm not answering the phone. That's a non-starter. If you're already doing $1 billion in merchant, and in this industry, is our lawyers wouldn't even help. Wouldn't even pick up the phone or even try to hire on to make that deal happen.
What is your minimum?
In the Series A round is 50,000. In our series pre-seed, it was $10,000 as we were just doing friends and family. And a couple of people were smaller, so they did like a couple of Mhm.
And so you said the pre-C, you've extended it to Friday?
Yes.
Yeah, I just learned about this technology, like last week. And, of course, I hear radiation, like, the light bulb in my head goes right to Jackie, because that's what she did, save my life, so. And then, Larry is doing it as we speak, so I'm like, okay, well, I know I got at least 2 people there, and then I figured if they really see what benefit or whatever it could be, then, they could be the mushroom to maybe some of that, it's not really in my forte, but I believe in the technology.
Okay, and also one of the other reasons why, I mean, one of the talking points that I brought up to the board as far as extending it with Dr. Wiseman and her friend was the fact that being an early investor, one, taking advantage of that, but also invite for more positions on the company. We likely, Dr. Cross was already working on it, but it had a consortium of doctors, physicians who are actually on the board to, give recommendations, to, have input in what it is that we're doing.
You're in the right place. I mean, we've obviously had a consult. Ron Guerrero, he couldn't be here today just because of the timing.
Right.
Obviously from Washington Hospital Center and around the country.
Mhm.
Really thought it was obviously a great project and, we extended a conversation with you guys whenever you're ready to go.
Okay.
Please let me say, so much to put out there.
Right.
You can do it up in meetings, take it, okay, and then we have some people that we're gonna talk to as well, it's just a timing.
No, I understand that, and like I was, right, what I was explaining to Dr. Wiseman, yeah, extending friends and family, but also, once you get started, what I learned from the last round was, once you get started, like the momentum builds up, and then, one person tells another person, then you follow somebody else, you're doing a Zoom for somebody, so it's like, it kind of, the momentum picks up, so that's what I was like, let's just get started, even if it's 2 or 3, let's just get started, and then we can,
So active friends and family is 50, that's what the minimum.
Right.
That makes sense. Well, I think, these are actually friends and family, so.
So this is really the friend and family right now.
In here and punch holes and ask the questions, and I believe in what they say they do, so. Questions after this, let's talk and see what we think.
All right.
Thank you. So questions first. Yeah. So we'll do it again, hopefully. We'll probably miss this round, but we'll do it again. With other people, if there is.
You business card, I know. I do not.
I'll just get your contact.
Yeah, I can definitely need my contacts.
All right, good. Thanks, Diallo. Thanks, y'all.
We'll be doing it again. Thank you for coming on with us tonight. We appreciate your time, and we'll do it again, and we believe in your technology and continue to learn more.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.